For 9 days, investigators insisted nothing survived. The doorbell camera outside 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie's home had been torn away, its memory erased, its silence absolute. Whatever crossed that porch before dawn on February 1st, 2026 disappeared with her. Then the FBI Director Kash Patel revealed something they never expected to recover. For blurred frames pulled from damaged system data, a masked intruder, gloved hands, a heavy pack, a weapon resting at the hip, proof that someone was there, proof that someone came prepared. The images had been hiding deep inside the digital ruins, fragments overlooked, waiting for someone to find them. Today, we are uncovering what those images expose, what investigators are quietly building behind the scenes, and the questions surrounding Savannah Guthrie's missing mother. If you want to understand the moment everything changed in that Arizona night, stay with us. Because the truth is darker than anyone imagined, and the answers may already be in front of us, waiting to be seen again. Now, today, forever, tonight, soon, here, now, end. Before anyone understood the evidence, they had to understand the woman at the center of it. Nancy Guthrie was not a mystery to the people who knew her. She was routine. She was discipline. She was the kind of person who woke up at the same time every morning, who folded the newspaper after reading it, who placed her keys in the same spot every night without thinking. She was born Nancy Ellen Long in the winter of 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky, at a time when the world itself was at war. She grew up in a working family, surrounded by structure, expectation, and responsibility. Those who knew her then described someone calm, observant, and determined. She carried that determination into adulthood. She attended college. She built a life. She married Charles Guthrie, a mining engineer whose career would take them across continents. They lived in places most people never see. Remote mining towns, foreign cities, temporary houses filled with permanent memories. In 1971, while living in Australia, she gave birth to her daughter, Savannah Guthrie. That child would grow up to become one of the most recognized faces in American media. But at the time, she was just a daughter growing up under the care of a mother who believed in stability. Eventually, the family settled in Tucson, Arizona. The house sat in the Catalina foothills, surrounded by desert terrain that stretched endlessly in every direction. It was quiet there, quiet enough that neighbors noticed unfamiliar sounds, quiet enough that darkness truly meant darkness. Nancy lived in that home for decades. She raised her children there. She built her routines there. She survived loss there. In 1988, her husband died unexpectedly during a work trip. He was gone in an instant. She remained. She continued forward. She raised her children alone. She worked. She endured. Time passed. Her children grew. They built their own lives. They moved away. But Nancy stayed. The house remained her anchor. Even into her 80s, she refused to leave it. She valued independence. She valued familiarity. She valued control over her own life. Those closest to her said she remained mentally sharp. She remembered appointments. She answered messages. She stayed connected. She was not isolated. She was not vulnerable in the way strangers imagine. She was present. On the night of January 31st, 2026, nothing appeared different. She spent the evening with family. She talked. She laughed. She existed inside a normal moment that no one realized would be the last confirmed moment they would ever share with her. She was driven home. The vehicle entered the garage. The door closed. The outside world disappeared behind it. That was the final confirmed sighting. For several hours, nothing happened. Or at least, nothing visible happened. The house stood in silence. The desert remained still. The world continued without interruption. But sometime after midnight, something changed. At 1:47 in the morning, the doorbell camera stopped transmitting. It did not lose connection gradually. It did not malfunction slowly. It stopped instantly. The interruption was sudden.
Permanent.
Intentional. Investigators would later confirm that the device had been physically removed. Someone had approached the house. Someone had stood at the door. Someone had reached out and taken control of the only witness that never sleeps. Minutes later, Additional systems inside the home began losing connection. Signals dropped. Monitoring devices disconnected. At 2:28 a.m., her pacemaker stopped transmitting its data. That moment created a timestamp investigators would later examine repeatedly, because that was the moment her digital presence ended. The following morning, her routine broke. She did not answer calls. She did not respond to messages. She did not appear where she was expected. Concern formed slowly, then all at once. Family members drove to the house. They entered. They saw the absence. Her car remained. Her belongings remained. Her medication remained. She did not. Authorities were called. The scene was secured. Investigators arrived. Among them was Chris Nanos, who immediately recognized the implications. This was not a disappearance explained by confusion. This was not someone wandering away. This was an event. Soon after, the FBI joined the investigation. Federal agents examined the property. They documented everything. They searched for evidence of entry, evidence of struggle, evidence of removal. They understood immediately that whoever had come to that house had come with purpose. Days later, the investigation expanded further when Director Kash Patel reviewed the recovered surveillance fragments. What they revealed would transform the case from a disappearance into something far more deliberate. Because someone had been there. Someone had stood at the door. Someone had reached inside her world. For days, investigators faced a silence that made no sense. The missing camera was more than a device. It was the only neutral witness to whatever had happened on that porch. Without it, the timeline had gaps no human memory could fill. Agents from the FBI began working with digital forensic specialists, people trained to recover fragments others assume are gone forever. They accessed back-end servers. They examined corrupted storage sectors. They searched for anything that survived deletion.at first. There was nothing. Then there were fragments, broken files, partial images, incomplete sequences, data that looked useless until it was reconstructed piece by piece. Investigators assembled those pieces slowly, knowing even a single frame could change everything. 9 days after the disappearance, Director Kash Patel authorized the release of what they had found. For still images, black and white, grainy, damaged, but clear enough. A person stood at the door. The figure wore a ski mask. The face was hidden behind fabric designed to remove identity. Gloves covered both hands. A backpack rested on the shoulders. At the waist sat what appeared to be a weapon. The posture revealed something else. Calm, controlled, not rushed, not uncertain. Whoever this was had not arrived by accident. Video recovered from the same damaged files showed movement. The figure noticed the camera almost immediately. A gloved hand reached forward, attempting to block the lens. When that failed, the person grabbed a nearby plant. Leaves were pulled into view, covering the device. Seconds later, the signal ended. It was not panic. It was procedure. Investigators studied every detail. Height estimates placed the individual between 5 feet 9 inches and 5 feet 10 inches. Build was average. Nothing about the body shape stood out. Nothing obvious that would make recognition easy. Except for the equipment. The backpack was identified as a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiking pack. A product sold through Walmart locations across the country. Detectives began tracing recent purchases. They requested transaction records. They reviewed surveillance footage from retail stores. They searched for customers who matched the physical profile. At the same time, weapons experts examined the holster. This position was unusual. This placement suggested familiarity. This was not someone carrying a weapon for the first time. There was another detail. A small one, easy to miss. Investigators believed they could see the outline of a ring beneath the glove. Created a faint distortion in the fabric. A shape that did not belong. A personal object. A possible identifier. While analysts examined the footage, search teams moved into the desert surrounding the home. The terrain stretched for miles. Dry earth, loose rock, endless exposure. Volunteers joined the effort. They walked in lines. They scanned the ground. They looked for anything that did not belong. Nearly 2 miles from the house, they found something. Gloves, black, discarded, weathered by exposure, similar in appearance to the gloves worn by the figure on the porch. The gloves were collected, preserved, transported to a forensic laboratory. Scientists began testing immediately. They searched for fibers. They searched for residue. They searched for DNA. They found it. Male DNA, unknown, not belonging to the missing woman, not belonging to her family. The sample was entered into the national database maintained by law enforcement, known as CODIS. Millions of offender profiles existed there. Millions of identities waiting to match. No match was found. Whoever left that DNA had never been entered, never been recorded, never been connected to a crime that required submission. It was both progress and frustration. Investigators turned to genealogical analysis next, a method that compares genetic markers across public ancestry databases, a method capable of identifying relatives, a method capable of building family trees from fragments of biology. But it required time. While laboratories worked, another development complicated everything. Messages began arriving. Emails, letters, claims. A ransom demand appeared in the inbox of a television station. It described details about the missing woman that had not been released publicly. It demanded money, cryptocurrency, compliance. Soon after, additional communications reached media outlets, including TMZ. The messages repeated the same claims, the same threats, the same promises. They said she was alive. They said she was afraid. They said payment would bring her back. Investigators faced a new problem: authenticity. Anyone could send a message. Anyone could pretend. Determining whether the sender was real or an opportunist became its own investigation. Time continued moving forward. Every hour created distance. Every day reduced probability. Search teams kept walking. Analysts kept reviewing data. Agents kept following leads. Because somewhere between the moment that camera went dark and the moment those gloves were left in the desert, the truth had passed through human hands. And those hands still existed. As the investigation entered its third week, attention shifted toward the people left behind. Families of missing persons often live inside two realities at once. One where hope survives. One where fear grows quietly. For the children of Nancy Guthrie, those realities existed side by side. They waited for updates. They waited for calls. They waited for anything that could confirm what no one could yet explain. Among them was her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, whose public life made the private loss impossible to hide. She had spent years delivering news about strangers. Now she was living inside the story herself. She traveled back to Tucson immediately. She stood in front of cameras not as a journalist, but as a daughter asking for help. In a video message shared publicly, she spoke carefully. She chose each word with precision. She asked for proof. She asked for mercy. She asked for her mother to come home. There was no response. Behind the scenes, agents from the FBI continued building their timeline. They reviewed traffic cameras. They reviewed neighborhood surveillance. They searched for vehicles that did not belong. Patterns began to form. Certain movements repeated. Certain vehicles appeared more than once. None could yet be tied directly to the figure on the porch, but investigators understood something important. This had not been random. Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed publicly that the possibility of pre-surveillance was being examined. Someone may have watched the house. Someone may have learned the routines. Someone may have chosen the moment carefully. That realization changed the emotional weight of the case, because it suggested planning. It suggested patience. It suggested intent that existed long before the night itself. Search efforts expanded again. Air units scanned desert areas that had not yet been covered. Ground teams returned to locations already searched, knowing evidence can be missed the first time. Specialists examined digital data from personal devices, looking for unfamiliar contacts. Financial investigators reviewed transactions, searching for anything unusual. Still, nothing explained the central question. Where was she? Public attention intensified. Coverage spread across national broadcasts, including segments on NBC, where colleagues of her daughter now reported on the disappearance. The story reached millions. Tips began arriving from across the country. Some useful, many not. Each required examination. At the same time, forensic genealogists continued working the unknown DNA recovered from the gloves. They compared markers. They built possible family connections. They searched for names that intersected with geography and probability. The process moved forward slowly, but it moved. Hope existed inside that process. Because DNA does not forget. Days turned into weeks. The house remained exactly as she had left it. Her belongings waited where she had placed them. Her absence became the loudest presence of all. Neighbors placed flowers outside. Yellow roses appeared near the entrance. Symbols of remembrance. Symbols of expectation. They represented a belief that the story was not finished. Investigators refused to call it finished. They continued asking questions. They continued reviewing evidence. They continued following the smallest details, knowing the smallest detail can break the largest mystery. They understood something the public often does not. Cases like this do not end suddenly. They end quietly, with a phone call, with a name, with a moment where uncertainty becomes certainty. Until that moment arrives, everything remains possible. Someone knows what happened. Someone remembers that night. Someone carries the truth, and somewhere beyond the reach of cameras and search teams, beyond the digital fragments and forensic analysis, beyond the headlines and public appeals, the answer continues to exist in the real world, unchanged by time, waiting for the moment when it is finally uncovered. And when that moment comes, it will not erase the silence that came before, but it will explain it, and that explanation will begin with the same simple fact investigators understood from the very beginning. She did not disappear alone. As investigators continue examining evidence and pursuing new leads, we will keep documenting every development in this case. If this report helped you understand what happened, subscribe to follow future updates. And if you know anything, contact authorities. Your voice could help bring Nancy Guthrie home back safely tonight again.